Hey everybody, Joshua here with I Cut Grass, and it is January the 8th, 2020. Today what I want to do briefly is create a video here explaining how I handle mulch jobs. Now, I made a video before about having people to consider adding mulch to their book of business. I'm going to explain today how I do my estimates, okay? And I may have gone a little bit into that in that video. Before I do, if you haven't already, please consider hitting the like button on the video, and then subscribe to the page if you haven't. You know, as I've said in almost all my videos, the goal here is to help people, right? The goal is to help people so that they can have that transition into a successful business a little easier by hopefully avoiding some of the pitfalls that I experienced, because I learned through trial and error. And as I've said before also, the way I do my business it might not be the way that you want to do yours, and that's fine. But when you have your business, it's important to learn about how others do things, because it can help you be more efficient. Maybe it can help you to cut back on the amount of work that you have to do, and hopefully, regardless, help you to have a more successful business when it comes to profitability. So if you know somebody you think could benefit from this video or some of the videos I have created, I hope you would consider passing the information for the YouTube channel over to them. I don't get paid for any of this. I just do this to really help people. So, mulch jobs. How do I quote mulch jobs? Well, I use a measurement tool, a wheel, and I walk around, and what you got to do is you got to figure out the area of the beds, the total area, and that will help you to determine how much mulch you need. Now, when I do a mulch job, my estimate is based on 2 to 3 inches of mulch that I'm going to put down. And 99% of the time, the estimate that I put together doesn't include cleaning out the old mulch. That's important. You can do that, and there are cases where it does need to be done, but in most cases, we don't do that. And if we do, if the customer has asked for it, or if we believe it's necessary, then we'll take that additional labor into consideration when we put together an estimate for the homeowner. But what you want to do is you want to figure out the total area of the beds so you can determine how much mulch you need. And when you do that, the main factors that are going to influence what you're going to estimate the job to ultimately be are going to be the quantity of mulch, the quality of mulch, and then the overall difficulty of the job, okay? So, for example, there are some jobs out there that might be 30 yards of mulch, but are easier to do than some other jobs that might be 14 or 15 yards of mulch, because maybe the job that has lesser mulch, you got to wheelbarrow a lot. Or maybe you can't get a wheelbarrow through a fence, so you got to use a trash can, and that's going to wear you down a little more. Or maybe there are a bunch of flowers that are already up, and that's another thing. The time of the year is going to determine how much time is associated with doing the job, but also how much mulch you're going to use. Because if you measure out the mulch beds at the top of the season before the flowers have started coming up, and you got 15 yards of mulch, there are cases where you might only need 10 yards of mulch once the flowers are up. So there are things like that you have to consider, okay? I can tell you in my area in central Indiana, specifically in Hamilton County, you're typically on the residential side anywhere between $85 for the yard delivered and installed, as much as $125 for the delivery and installation of the mulch. Again, we're looking at the quality of mulch, the quantity, and then the difficulty of the job to ultimately influence where the estimate is going to be on that spectrum. And the more you do this, the more experience you get, the more experienced and trained you will be to make the decision where you want to be. And then also you want to know what your mulch or what your profit margin has to be, and you consider what your overhead is and all that kind of stuff. Guys, there are a lot of guys out there that do mulch and do it for next to nothing, and they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're lessening the value of the service and the work that they're doing, and they're helping to drive down artificially the realistic expectation amongst the consumer as to what he or she should be willing to pay to have the work done. So you can do cheap work if you want to, but I've used an example before on lawn mowing. I would rather do 50 yards at $50 than do 80 yards at $40. I just would. I'm not afraid to work, but I want to yield the highest profit I can. And the longer you get into the business, the more exposure you're going to get from customers that are going to be willing to pay for what you can do. So what does my mulch service include? Well, it includes a clean out. So we'll go through the beds, pull out the weeds that are necessary. We'll cut back any bushes that need to be cut back. We will edge the beds if necessary, and usually that's with a half moon spade edge. I do have an Echo gas-powered bed redefiner, but oftentimes over the years we found that if the soil is wet, it doesn't want to cut the beds cleanly. And I don't like those real big bed redefiners that you can find for $1,500, $2,000. We just don't need them. We don't. They do really good, but over time, the more that you do this kind of work, you'll find you don't need to have it. It's really not necessary. I'm not saying it doesn't add value. I'm just saying for me personally, I don't think it's worth the investment. So we've got the edging, the bushes, the clean out I mentioned. Consider whether or not the mulch needs to be cleaned out and or if the customer is expecting it to be cleaned out, because you'll put that in your estimate if so. And generally you're looking at, realistically, on the average, a man can spread a yard of mulch per the hour, doing quality work. That doesn't mean that there aren't some guys out there that can do 2 or 3 yards on the hour. That's not what I'm saying. But to take your time, to pace yourself, to do good work, the average for estimating jobs is 1 yard on the hour. So you also want to include in your estimate there that you're doing a haul out with that estimate. So if they have any clippings and that kind of stuff from bushes, limbs, all that kind of stuff, leaves maybe, you're hauling all that stuff away, and you list that in your estimate. And then we always do a topical application of an herbicide, maybe a preen, maybe something more powerful like Snapshot, but you got to make sure you understand what the label says. And here's why. Snapshot will kill hydrangeas. And I know there are guys out there who say, no, it doesn't. We use it all the time. Well, just wait till that one time that you kill it. And then the customer gets upset. And then you have to replace it. And maybe you get a negative review. I would personally encourage everybody to follow what the label says. Okay? I don't care what somebody else tells me what they've had experience with, because ultimately in the state of Indiana, if the state chemist office is contacted, they're going to ask me, did I follow the label instructions? And everybody that has a license to do herbicide applications know and understand that that's a violation of federal law. Now, it's not necessarily a violation to put, for example, Snapshot on the hydrangea. Just know that it's listed as one of the controlled weeds or plants or something that's going to be damaged from it. What I also do with this estimate is on the same form of the estimate, I include an option for monthly mulch bed maintenance. Now, I used to require this. I don't do that anymore. But the reason I do this is because I can keep the mulch beds looking nice, and it does generate additional revenue, and it's not that difficult. You go through with a rake or a cultivator, and you turn the mulch. It keeps it from wanting to stick together and prevent water from coming through. It helps to mitigate or limit the amount of mildew that's going to happen because of excessive water. It's going to keep the mulch beds looking fresh, and then also it gives you an opportunity to go through and keep the weeds under control. Here in Central Indiana, on my experience over the last 12 years of doing this, the biggest weed problem we have is thistle. And thistle's a pain in the butt. And in as little as 2 weeks after a mulch job is done, you can have a major thistle problem in that area. So you want to use an herbicide that's appropriate for that kind of stuff. But back to what I was saying and the justification on the monthly mulch bed maintenance, it can help keep that stuff under control. And in the long run, the customer is going to like that. Doesn't mean that they're all going to accept it, but it also comes down to how you present it to the customer. I just tell them when my estimate is together for them, I say, hey, there's also an option down there for the monthly mulch bed maintenance. We can make sure that we keep the beds looking nice and weed free for you over the course of the season. And a side note real quick, I'm not a fan of using any type of fabric under mulch beds. I don't, especially plastic. It's going to prevent water from getting down under. It's going to harbor mosquitoes. And I don't want to do anything to encourage West Nile virus or anything else that those nasty things may be spreading out there. And the same thing with the actual perforated fabric. Over time, that's going to be blocked off because the mulch is going to start to break down a little bit, repeated rain, and the next thing you know, it's holding moisture. You don't want that. You're getting fungus in your beds. Maybe you're getting dog vomit or whatever, which is natural. It can happen, but this video isn't about that. Just know that I'm not a fan of fabric at all. It's not worth it in my opinion. And then what you want to do after you complete the job is you want to make sure that the customer is happy. Once you've done that, what I like to do is I run online software. So I use QuickBooks. I really like it. And I also am a fan of using Outlook for scheduling. I like the calendar ability on there. Some people use stuff like Yard Books and everything, and it has a proactive program maybe built into it, or some other programs do, where they will automatically maybe send out emails to your customers or reminders for you. I don't do that personally. I don't like it. But I also use an old-fashioned day minder. And the types of day minders that I use have one page that will have each day of the entire month. And then in between that and the next month, it has the individual days. Okay, I use this for scheduling. I like it. I use this in addition to Outlook for scheduling because if something ever happens to a computer and it dies and my information is gone, I've got a book. And I've got 3 or 4 of them. So I do spend some time recording it, but for me, it's fine. Now, if you don't want to spend that time and you want to find something completely online, you can do that, but just understand you're taking a risk. So you schedule the, after you find out that they're happy, you schedule the estimate in whatever software or whatever program you're using for the next year. And you usually want to contact them 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time, so you have time before anyone else gets in there. And most of my mulch work is repeated business every year because we do really good work, and the people are happy with that. And then the next thing you want to do, this is really important. This is how you can get more business. 2 things right here. Take an immediate look at the properties immediately around. I did a video about this. It's got about 30,000 views as of today. I'm excited about that. It's not viral by any means, but enough people are looking at it. But you want to look at their properties and find out. You can tell. You don't have to walk on their property. I'm not telling you to trespass, but hey, this guy has mulch here, and he has bushes, and this guy has mulch. And you look at the address and send a business card in the mail. Hey, my name is Joshua with I Cut Grass. I just did a mulch project for one of your neighbors. If you're ever open to having an estimate, I'd love to talk with you. Here's a business card. Mail it off. Okay, do that for each of the properties surrounding the house. That's called clover leafing, at least what I call clover leafing. And then immediately when you follow up with that customer, when the job is done, send them an email with a link to your Google listing so they can write a review. Don't do it the next day. Don't do it the next week. Don't do it the next month. And here's why. The farther that you get from the date of service that you have done that service for that customer, the less emotionally attached they become. Okay, doesn't mean that they won't write a review for you a month later, okay, because I have customers that do it all the time. But over the years, I have found that if I do that right away, I get a higher amount of reviews from my customer. Now, if you'll notice, a minute ago, I said to make sure that the customer is happy with the work. Then you want to encourage them to write a review. Because if you've done something wrong or you had a bad experience, maybe you don't ask them to write a review. Or if it's one of those customers that are unrealistic, and we all know who they are, maybe you don't want them to write a review. There are going to be a lot of people that go out there and write a review for you without you asking them to do it. And it may be a long time after you've done something. But this is what I do. This is how I have had success with mulch, and how I've been able to keep a good book of business for mulch. Our mulch season every year lasts about 9, maybe 11 weeks. And then after that, we'll have jobs, requests filter in, very little here or there. A house goes on the market, for example, or someone's having a party, the next year or whatever, who knows. But anyway, guys, that's it. That's, you want to make sure you record all of your estimates, the customers that you don't get the jobs for, their opportunities for next year. Remember, if you like this video, if it's helped you in any way, shape, or form, please subscribe to the page, like the video, pass it on to somebody else. I hope this has been beneficial for you guys. Best luck to you in 2020. I'll be on again sometime here in the future with another video.